Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Strategy Guide Reviews. My name is Blake Grunman, and I'm here to actually continue the trend that Carrie set earlier yesterday, which is reviewing a game that I should have reviewed a guide for eons ago, and that is Titanfall 2. Now, we were provided actually a review copy of this from the good folks over at Prima Games, and actually, I kind of wanted to lead off with the fact that this is a really well put together book. I really like it, and something about the way that these guys put together a collector's edition, they really feels like it's a high quality book. And they've always really done a fantastic job of that, and this is no exception to the rule. Really nice finish to it. It feels really good in your hands. It's got a nice heft to it. 260 some odd pages to it. So I mean, it's a decent sized book, along with the fact that it is a really decent sized guide. Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised with the amount of content that was in here, especially given that the first Titanfall, it was only multiplayer. So when they found out that it was going single player, first of all, I was very excited about that. But the fact that now the guide is going to have a lot more content in it because it's got a single player campaign. So first off, I kind of wanted to just jump into it when we're talking about a lot of the content in this book. It uses images a lot. I mean, you can see it. There's a lot of pictures. It takes up a lot of real estate on the screen. I kind of like that. I really do. I mean, I've always been one to say that if there's white space on the page, I start to get a little antsy. So if nothing else, they were able to put a lot of images there. That said, it definitely feels like in some places it might be padding out the walkthrough just a smidgen, but there's so much good stuff in this guide. I mean, the way that they use callouts in many different cases, I mean, they use callouts really, really well. So you can see here, this is the first time that you encounter a new Titan. They have a full callout for it section right there. And this is the case for just about anything that you encounter for the first time. A new weapon, a new enemy type. You have essentially a walkthrough every single time that you encounter something for the first time. And so it kind of helps get your bearings with what you're dealing with, whether you're controlling a new Titan, whether you're dealing with a new weapon set, whether you're dealing with a new skill set, new loadouts, different packs for your Titan. Hell, even enemies that you're facing for the first time that you don't necessarily know how to kill, it walks you through that process. So all right, so here's that blinky red spot that we're supposed to be trying to shoot at and take care of guys. Because especially if it's your first time in a new shooter's world, that sometimes can be a issue. So, I mean, they do a really good job of that. Now, there is an exception to that rule. So, you see how much space they have on the page here? I mean, they've got a lot of room for, here's your call out for the new Titan. Here's the call out for achievements, which we'll kind of get to in a second. Lots of really big screenshots. Now, you see this little itty bitty guy right here with a little itty bitty screenshot. That is for your collectibles. Now, Titanfall, they have a series of different helmets that they have scattered throughout. That's kind of their main collectible that they have built into the campaign. That's really, I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of one of the few things that it has that kind of aids in its replayability. And so these are scattered all around the world. But the problem is, as you could see with that image that I showed you there, it gives you a very brief description as to where these items are hiding, and then one or two very, very small screenshots, especially relative to everything else on the page. It makes it kind of difficult to see, all right, so this is the one item that I actually give a crap about in this campaign walkthrough, because it's the one thing that the campaign doesn't hold your hand and walk you through. And so I really wanted it to be bigger. It would have been great if their actual locations, that the descriptions that they give you, were a little bit more exact. They seem kind of vague in certain places, and the screenshots that they use are not very helpful in many cases, and they're zoomed out so far, unless it is actually zooming directly in on the helmet itself, which is very rare. It's very difficult to really use those well. I mean, there are certainly times where it's fine. You can see it. You don't need a big screenshot in order to find these helmets. However, in many cases, you're just kind of looking at that going, how is that supposed to be helpful? Which is kind of unfortunate. Now, one of the other things that I really do like about this campaign walkthrough is the fact that, they have the call outs for, hey, for every time you encounter something for the first time. But at the end of every chapter, they also have an achievement and trophy checklist. I like that. As somebody who is trying to be a completionist, I want to get everything that I can out of a game through its first playthrough. I don't necessarily want to have to come back to it if I don't have to. This gives you a breakdown of every single achievement or trophy that you should have been able to accomplish in a given chapter. Now, I think it's got either 8 or 9 chapters in the single player campaign. So, I mean, it does a decent enough job kind of trying to draw your attention to those events, so you can try to, as you're working through the actual walkthrough, to make sure that you can actually so you can accomplish all of these items. But there are some occasions where it's a little vague as far as, okay, so what am I supposed to be doing to get this, and how is it that I actually accomplished this during the missions? And so there are a couple of occasions where it felt like that could have been spelled out a little better. But overall, I really like the structure of that, where essentially you've got your overall walkthrough, you've got lots of screenshots, lots of pictures, and then you've got this breakdown at the end where it's like, here's all the things that you should have been able to do, just kind of a general checklist. So that is very solid, and I like that. Also, throughout this walkthrough, there are a lot of screenshots. I mean, a ton of screenshots. So, especially if you're looking for this as more of a companion to the game itself, this actually works really well, especially if you're a big fan of it, because it's going to give you a lot of these cool set pieces that you kind of were seeing in motion. You can see these in more screenshot form throughout the book, and they're blown up to be a very good solid size. So I like that. Now, again, the whole thing with the collectibles being small, that's a kind of a deal breaker in many cases, because quite frankly, if it's a first person shooter, you're not necessarily going to need a whole lot of help as far as, all right, follow corridor A to get to corridor B. And when that's the key focus there, it was kind of an issue for me. Along those same lines, you have these big screenshots, but there were several cases where you have these big, like, quarter-page screenshots, and it's a picture of a tunnel. It's like, why? Why is this important to me? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense other than, oh yeah, this is the relative location to what it's walking me through. But it's like, this is a friggin' tunnel. I don't need a big blown up shot of this. Maybe this is your small one instead of the big one that you're going to, have spanning across the entire top portion of the page. So, I mean, I feel like there could have been a little bit more thought potentially put into that. Now, that said, like I said, I did like that it had lots of pictures. So overall, I think it's a win, but maybe that selection could have used a little bit of work. Now, as you might guess, the single player walkthrough, well, that is nice. Titanfall 2, the meat of this game is in the multiplayer. And actually, the last guide that they did for the original Titanfall, I actually really liked the way that they handled that. I thought the multiplayer guide was pretty solid. This time around, they definitely are following the same trends. So I'll just kind of zip over to that section here really fast. So first of all, when you're going in through the actual mission types, they go through, and this is something that I kind of think is underutilized a lot of times in multiplayer guides. If you're new to a multiplayer shooter, and there's 50% of their audience is going to be new because previously this was exclusive to Xbox and PC. Now that you have the PlayStation audience getting in on this, there are going to be mission types that people aren't going to understand. So if you're new, if a mission type that comes up that, it's well, let's see here. I'm just trying to find a good example of a mission type walkthrough. So if all of a sudden you have Titan versus Minion come up, what the hell does that mean? I don't know. And on top of that, I don't know what the useful tactics are in order to be competitive and be a good teammate in this. So not only does it give you a nice walkthrough of each type of mission, but it also goes through and it walks you through different scenarios where, hey, this is the best tactics to use in this type of a match. Or, hey, this is these are some of the key concepts that you want to use, say, in a Titan versus Pilot. And there are many different types of matches, and that's one of the things that Titanfall and also Respawn, who previously, obviously brought you the Modern Warfare franchise, that's what they're good at. That's what they're very good at. And so there's a lot of variety in this game. And so they've done a very good job of kind of breaking it out and telling you, here are the ways that you can be successful on day one. Now, there is plenty of sections in here where they say, especially with the loadouts, where they'll say, yeah, you know, these are what some of the things that we'd recommend, but you want to try to do something that caters best to your play style. And I think that that's important, because in a lot of cases, people will kind of look at these loadouts and they'll be like, okay, this is what you're going to use, and that's what you follow from day one. But the problem is that, especially with these multiplayer games, a lot of times they're being balanced all the time. So you might find something that works for you now, but 2 months from now, that's probably not going to work. So the fact that they definitely kind of give themselves an out where they're like, yeah, you know, these are what we'd recommend right now, but you definitely want to experiment for yourself. I think that was smart on their part. Now, another thing that I really liked, and this is something just as like a multiplayer stat nerd, I really like. So you can kind of see for each one of these weapons, you can see the little circular items here in the middle. You can see that it's a breakdown of the different strengths and the different percentages. And then also along the far right, you can also see that there are also breakdowns of, hey, here are all of it kind of goes, all right, so here are the field notes for this item. And they'll talk about, okay, so here are its standard properties. I'll just kind of give you an example. And it's like, due to the weapon's less than stellar accuracy, the flatline is best deployed at close to intermediate ranges, attacking minions and pilots alike. To combat the weapon's harsh recoil, limit full auto bursts to 2 or 3 shots. Things like this, that's really very useful, especially, again, if you are a new person to the franchise. You don't necessarily know all this stuff, and just because there isn't necessarily always a real world equivalent to what they're talking about, it gives you a good starting point where you can also look at it from a tactics point of view, and also trying to find something that's going to best fit your play style. And along those same lines, they also have breakdowns for all of the different types of Titans, which you can kind of see here. All of the different Titans, beautiful half-page images of each one. Really cool. You can see the packs down at the bottom of the page that kind of give, all right, here are all the different perks that are associated with each Titan. And then they'll also kind of talk about, all right, so here are the maps where they will appear. Here are the situations where this is the kind of Titan that you want to use. That is awesome. Now, probably the spot where I really think they did a bang-up job is in the multiplayer maps. So you can see here, got a full page map overhead map of this multiplayer location. Then you can see over on the opposite edge of the screen there, you can see that it has individual images for different areas on this map. And it breaks down key locations like, all right, so here's the bridge, here's the pump, here's the storage area. And it gives you different things like, okay, from this location, you're going to have a good scouting location on this point and this point. Or this is a free run spot where you can actually go and you're not going to have to worry about a sniper going out. This is a key area for a spawn point in this different match type. And it goes through each individual key position on the map. Then they follow up with, all right, so for this type of map, here are the kinds of loadouts that we would recommend using. And here's the type of Titan loadouts that we would recommend using. They have this broken down on a map by map basis. That's awesome. This kind of detail is not, most multiplayer guides, I feel like you don't get this kind of thing, especially in the printed edition. A lot of times you'll get that maybe with an online edition, but the fact that they had all of this stuff well in advance and they were able to put these together in the printed version, I think it's awesome. And it was really well put together. Now, and then another piece is at the end of each map breakdown, they then will go through and they will look at each game mode, each unique game mode at the time of launch. And it will say, all right, so for a capture the flag, this is kind of one of the key areas that you want to try to control. They give a breakdown for every single type of match point, amped hardpoint, bounty hunt, capture the flag, pilots versus pilots, last Titan standing. It does that for every single location on them, or for every single match type. So, I mean, this is really, really well put together. And then at the very end, you see a breakdown of these key locations, but you'll also see, all right, so here's where they are, like the individual call outs. Here's where they are relative to the rest of the map. And then if you look in close, you can also see things that are labeled on here, like here are spawn points. Here are areas where you will have as a DMZ area. Here's areas where you will see ammo drops. Here's where you can purchase new weapons, things like that. It's all built into this guide. So, I mean, as far as the maps go, this is really, really a fantastic guide. I really liked that portion of it, and I think they did a bang-up job as far as that was concerned. Now, So a couple of things that are weird are they put the maps in the very, very back of the guide in front of the appendices. I feel like something like this, it maybe should have been closer to where they originally detail the multiplayer portion. I mean, I understand why they put it together the way that they did, but just as far as flow is concerned, I want to look at the modes and then I want to look at my maps. Or if I'm going to multiplayer, the first thing I really care about in that multiplayer section is the maps. Straight up. Now, I understand that sometimes it's a little hard to explain tactics if you haven't actually broken down the individual, unit types and things like that. But I feel like there could have been something that could have been done to organize that a little bit better, because doing that at the very back, it's like, this is the core purpose why people are going to be coming to this. Maybe you try to work that more towards the front, just more a stylistic thought. Now, and that was just kind of weird for the flow. And now there were a couple of things that kind of stuck weird with me. So first of all, this is the collector's edition. It is a $40 collector's edition. What they include with it is the book, which we've got right here. But then they have a digital guide, the digital version of the guide, which is, it's nice. And then a map, a 16-month map. Or I'm sorry, a 14-month calendar. So that's really cool. I like that. However, this is $40. $40 for that. Now, I would understand it if there was like, hey, there's some special features inside of the book, or hey, an interview with the developers, or here's a bunch of cool art assets that were used early on in the development process. But none of that is there. None of that. This is the exact same thing as what you would get with the $24 guide, except you get a digital copy of the guide as well, and a 14-month calendar. So, I mean, I feel like that your value add there is questionable at best. As far as the content that you're getting, the e-guide, it's not even a huge value add if you're asking me, because I redeemed it. I was checking it out. And so a couple of things were kind of weird for me as well, because if you look at the e-guide, there's been several multiplayer updates. They've added several new modes to the game since launch, and they've added several new maps. Nothing in the guide, the e-guide, reflects that. Again, I've railed on this before in my reviews, but if you're going to give me an e-guide, the benefit of that is that you can update it on the fly. There have been updates to this guide, but all that they were corrections to, hey, we used an image in the wrong place or something like that. You're not going to add in any new coverage for the new maps and the new modes that were added in. I mean, that seems like an unfortunate oversight. That I understand that there's, a limited amount of budget for these sorts of things, but that's your key benefit. That's what makes this worthwhile. That's what makes getting that e-guide as a pack in for this collector's edition. That's what makes it worthwhile. And if you're not going to do that, if it's literally just going to be regurgitated everything that's in the book, that kind of it's kind of just really kind of defeats the whole purpose of it. And then also along those same lines, there's no updates to weapon notes, balancing, things like that as the game has been updating, because obviously they're going to be adjusting the balance as the game goes along. So overall, you're paying $40. You're going to get a guide that's almost an exact duplicate of what is already in the printed book. Okay, fine. And you're going to get this map, which the map this calendar, admittedly, it's a pretty nice calendar. You have individual images, but there's only a few images that are actually of Titans. Everything else looks like it's kind of concept art. And a lot of that stuff, it's kind of sparse concept art to begin with. So, I mean, I don't feel like you're getting your $40 worth if you're paying for this. Now, if you're getting the $24 guide, it'll work. It's actually a very solid guide, and I feel like you're getting your money's worth. However, if you're going to spend the full $40, I kind of feel like the value isn't quite there yet. So overall, really like the guide. Feel like it's really well put together. There are some weird, curious things, choices as far as the size of images and how they do some of the call outs in the single player campaign. The multiplayer portion, great. It really is very solid. I'm very impressed with the work that they've done here. But overall for the value, I feel like, you're kind of, they're under delivering just a little bit. So overall, this guide, Titanfall 2, it's going to get a 4 out of 5. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll talk to you again next time.